So we just wanted to get together, brainstorm for a little bit. Some of you already have things you're working on and others don't, but there's always plenty of opportunities. And some of you on here were appointed to the Education Committee by Debbie, some by your region president, but we're all glad you're here, however you came to us. So I guess that's what I'll say. We sent some ideas, some things have kind of come up. Oh, and it's Toby, right? Okay. Just, I figured not Stephen, but just since we haven't all had a chance to meet each other in person, but that's Toby. She's in my
T-O-B-Y?
Yes, T-O-B-Y.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet all of you.
Yeah.
Can I rename you? Is that okay?
Whatever you want.
Okay.
It's Stephen.
Yeah, my husband, for some reason, his Zoom on his computer doesn't seem to work so well. So he just changed it over to his account because we have a Zoom call every Sunday, and I just haven't bothered to change it back.
That's fine. So we've been very busy in this fall, and now we're looking ahead to the second half of the year. And some things have been brought to us by other members. Some of you had mentioned some things that you came up with. So we just want to brainstorm, put it all out there. If you have ideas, that's great. If you have ideas of people who might be able to take on the thing you're suggesting or have knowledge about the thing you're suggesting, that's even better, so that we have a contact for it. But really, we're just looking to have a direction. Some things, I just got off a class I was taking with Rabbi Yosef Goldman. He's now at the Rising Song Institute at Hadar. He was teaching a class on Nigun and elevating prayer with your voice, and how it was like a ladder. Your voice creates a ladder to the heavens. It was fascinating. But anyway, so we can start there. A lot of things have come out of the Hebrew classes. People registered thinking it was all kinds of different things that it was not. Is this a liturgy class? Is this a conversation class? Is this a writing class? No, it's not any of those things. We can talk about those things in the future, but that's not what you registered for. So we just, and I think we're a small enough group if you want to unmute and, just throw things out.
Jackie, why don't you give the suggestion that you started with?
Yeah, I was talking to Ellen before because I got on very early. I didn't get the email, so I thought the meeting was at 7:30. But anyway, I know there is a bat mitzvah class, and there's also a class in basic Hebrew, but there may be a need. I know I'm taking an Ulpan class through Hadassah, and because I'm very fluent in Hebrew reading and leading prayers, but I could carry on a conversation like an 18-month-old, and I wanted to be able to speak Hebrew. And so I'm in an Ulpan class where they teach you contemporary, modern conversational Hebrew, and maybe something like that. There might be a need for that, or a want for that among members, because that's the other side of the coin. For people that have already been to Hebrew school and have studied Hebrew and know how to read it, but they want to be able to speak it. Or you mentioned like a liturgy class, maybe a class on davening, on leading services and things like that. That something like that might be interesting to offer.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you.
the other thing is, hang on, Rachel, it is, we want to be able to prevent sort of our, one of our mission statements is to be able to present programming that other people aren't doing or in a different way than other people are doing. So that's just something to keep in mind too, like what's not out there, what's not available to people. Rachel.
And also has broad appeal, and also has semi-broad appeal.
Yeah.
We can be specific, but also needs to sort of provide different entry ways in for people. Rachel?
I know there's a name for it and I can't for the life of me bring it up in my mind, but the class would be why, let's say, Shabbat service is structured the way it is. In other words, what the parts of the service, why it's put together the way it's put together, that sort of thing. Certainly that's not something I learned in Hebrew school. I know that my synagogue has had classes on that.
Yeah, so is
From
mine,
time to
and
time.
it's so interesting. Yeah, mine has too.
Like,
Yeah.
why do you repeat things so many times?
I mean,
Exactly.
That's all part of
Yeah.
liturgy.
Yeah,
You know, it's all
the-
part
because,
of
I mean,
liturgy. It's
and
just
Rabbi Ellen
there's so
can-
many facets to the topic of liturgy.
Right.
Well, and I don't consider this liturgy as much as it's an explanation of what is contained in it, why it's in the order it's in it, why we repeat, et cetera, et cetera.
The structure of
Right.
the service is what it's called, yeah.
yeah. Well,
So
it could
there's
have two-
actually,
it can be two parts. It can be structure of services, why we do what we do, and so on, how we do what we do. But then also, if people are interested in learning how to lead, how
Well,
to
that's
lead
very
service.
different. That's really not what I'm talking about.
I know.
yeah, I was taking
No,
notes on all three, that there's one idea of what Rachel just said, the last part of like how you lead the service, then it's the meaning of the liturgy, and then
Yeah.
the service structure, which it's like three different components. And then you'll find
Mhm.
out that a lot of the service structure is minhaga makom. It's often just customs of the congregation of where you are. So
Yeah, and that's
But
what they're afraid to tell us.
It could be, why was this included?
Right.
And other things, like why was this chosen over whatever else?
and the liturgical development of it is really fascinating too. When, people think it's radical to change certain things when things have changed for a long time. Not just the matriarchs, but there have been other changes too.
And there are big
Has
differences
anything-
between Orthodox and conservative and Reform.
Mhm.
That what they include, what they don't include, and the
Well,
philosophy.
and I was also, as a second part, wondering if this would be an opportunity for some of the different scholars at the different institutions could speak to us, as well as potentially students could speak to us on particular topics. And then we could record it and we could kind of create a little library of these videos.
Rachel, it's interesting because this is a lot of the stuff that we're doing in the Bat Mitzvah class. Actually coming right into it now. So that self-selected population is picking up a lot of that. But it's interesting to hear that it goes outside of the borders of that. And, whether there's a broad enough, Rabbi, do you think there's a broad enough appeal on
I
that?
think there would be, because there's so many different aspects of it. It was interesting that Julia started with it. What is it? The Rising Song? Is that what Rabbi Goldman's doing now? And there's some fantastic women there. I would want to hear from a woman that we can hear about some of the liturgical changes that are taking place that are becoming more norm and more modern. And I think now that everything's in Zoom, I think it would be pretty fascinating to look at.
Is there somebody that would be able to, you want to hear from the women? Okay. Is there
Yeah.
somebody that you can think of that would be appropriate for that?
Deborah Mintz-Sachs is a fifth-year rabbinical student. Oh, you've heard her, Barbara? She goes to Camp Ramah in the Berkshires, and she spoke at my synagogue a year and a half ago. So she was really fantastic. Jan Orbach, who's a rabbi and professor at JTS, who helps with the Siddur. Alyssa Pomerantz-Borough. There are many students there. There must be someone I'm missing at Ziegler. I don't know all of them there, but there are a lot of people around who could do that. I think Rabbi Goldman's wife might even be able to also. She's a rabbi as well.
I have to say, I think this would gather a very large group of women who would be interested.
How many
It does
sessions would something like this entail?
That's what I was gonna say. It could be like individual thing. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be a whole
Right.
Mhm.
kind of course thing. Like you could do one just on the Amidah and how, you know, in each service, different, you have the same basic beginning and ending prayers, and then just the middle prayers switch out in the different services.
Is this
Um,
something then that we might want to take specific prayers and then just like, not a formal kind of every other month, but maybe I'm, maybe I'm disputing that with myself. Maybe we do want to do something that would be sort of an ongoing mini course. You know, in much
Ellen?
the way we did the Mishnah course.
Yeah.
We did
that's
it
what I was
over,
thinking.
what?
except that if you're looking at the whole structure, you know, maybe that's like, I don't know, an intro to that. If you're looking at the whole structure of the service, then it's
I don't
not focusing on one prayer or one,
Well, we could certainly talk to some of these people. All right,
right?
it's the start. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was wondering, has anything been done on why kashrut and how? Because my son-in-law is he's Lubavitcher, and he said, and he's a rabbi, and he said when he went for rabbinic training, the majority of what they learn is about kashrut.
Basar b'chalev. Yeah.
You know,
Oh.
and I was really surprised about that. I thought it would have been Talmud or
Well, that
rabbinic
is.
texts, but I guess it permeates, the thread goes through everything, through the Torah and through Talmud. But you
It's
know,
interesting. Ellen said that the bat mitzvah class does a lot of that, and that's one of their speakers in a couple of months. I don't, not this month, the next month.
March.
Like, yeah,
March.
March.
And I was able to get them as I said before, I usually like hearing from women, but it happened to be a male colleague that I suggested because he's actually a shochet. He knows how to slaughter meat, and he's a conservative rabbi. It's not something that most of us know, but he goes to Germany frequently. He learned it for the community there. So.
yeah,
Well, maybe we
it's
wanted to see
interesting.
some of the speakers and ask them if they want to do not a redo, but
They love it, but yeah, I mean, a lot of them probably would. Am I allowed to make suggestions too, or no?
Yes.
Okay,
please.
so I'm
Of course.
curious, and I can get people because I'm on the committee on Jewish law and standards, but there's some incredible, and this isn't only just women, I would allow the men to speak, but a lot of incredible tshuvot responsa have come out of the committee on Jewish law and standards now that is like above and beyond anything. I mean, like Rabbi Heller from Georgia wrote an incredible paper on live streaming and why we use Zoom now, or just last week, Micah Peltz wrote one about vaccination. He's doing a class for the Rabbinical Assembly, but he could do it for us. It hasn't passed yet, I think, but Rabbi Dorf is writing another paper on end of life issues and assisted suicide and helping the dying process. It's painful to read, in my opinion. But he also, hopefully it's changing, but he's in the midst of writing a paper we're approving on wearing masks. So a lot of how the law committee looks at these situations, we've been dealing with the COVID, but there are a lot of other things. With kashrut, a lot of papers have been written about that also. So.
Okay. Great.
I mean, I like that idea because it really shows that it is a changing tradition and
A living.
a
Living.
living tradition.
Yeah, and it's evolving in a lot of ways that we certainly,
And I
you know.
think a lot of people are not familiar with the committee at all, like
Right.
what the work is. And
I heard Rabbi Dorf, this was probably back in March, maybe April, early on. I don't remember if it was JTS or AJU, one of the two, but it was quite good.
Yeah, he's
Um,
pretty incredible.
Yeah.
and
Okay.
who sent Carol Greenberg? Did you send that to me about the folk tales?
Yes. Yeah,
I
there's,
think it would, like, how great would it be to have a storyteller,
Mm.
you know, or,
Ooh.
well, because a lot of the folk stories and folk tales, things that I used to teach in the Hebrew class, like the one with the rabbi takes the woman up right before Yom Kippur, and she's been bad mouthing everybody, and he takes her up to a tower in the town and with a pillow, yeah, and slashes it and says, "Okay, get the pillow, dump out all the feathers, and why are you doing this?" And he says, "Well, when you say bad things about people, can you retract them?" And she says, "No, of course not." And he says, "Well, can you?" First he asks her, "Can you go get the feathers back?" And she says, "No." Well, then it's like, Lashon Hara, you can't take those things back once you say them. And that fits in with Yom Kippur and Tshuva. And there are a lot of stories like that in Jewish liturgy. Talmudic stories, there are Helm stories, there are all kinds of folklore stories
Mhm.
that are interesting, and they have a point, and it's not so pedantic. It's easier to stomach, and I think it leads to good discussion.
But it's also with the act of storytelling as
Mhm.
something, as an entity, also in conjunction. So they become parallel kinds of things. That the act of storytelling is very important in Judaism, as well as the folk tales. So I think we could certainly do something that would work. I love the idea of getting a storyteller who can talk about, what goes into the concept of storytelling and how it's sort of evolved. And then with the folk tales as well, it would be a strong kind
or
of,
maybe it could be a story slam, like on the Moth. Maybe
Mm.
there are women with their own stories, like we've been,
Right.
we started with the Divrei Nashim. We're telling
Mhm.
our own stories
right,
and
telling our
experiences.
stories. Somebody had suggested, getting us to tell our stories and putting it in some sort of formal entity, publication, something, not formal necessarily. I mean, formal is a very broad word, but, in some way formalizing this year or this past year, or just going into, what happens when we're let loose again, what kinds of things, yeah,
True,
yeah,
that's
who
how it
knows?
feels.
Right.
When
So,
I was teaching in junior high school, I used to find that the stories that I would tell from my past, whether it was linked up to what I was currently teaching, whatever, would absolutely fascinate. This was 7th and 8th graders. And it was the stories that I think that they'll remember.
okay.
It's just a way of looking at life. I
Sure.
see stories
Sure.
everywhere. Yeah.
So, okay, I'm taking notes here. I'm writing all this down. Anybody else? There's no wrong answer here. This is the nice part. Safe
We talked
environment.
about, Barbara, do you want to talk about the Two for Seder? Or what you know about Two for Seder?
Funny, I was just thinking about that. I truthfully don't know very much about it. I know Marnie, and she happened to see my name in connection with Women's League. I mean, I'm not the one to tell you about True
Well,
for
just,
Seder. I just know that she started it. Her mother-in-law was one of the people killed in Pittsburgh, and she was absolutely devastated, and she wanted to do something, just do something. And she spoke with, I think mostly with our assistant rabbi, Evan Rapsky, and the two of them came up with this idea of encouraging people to invite two non-Jews to their Seder. And it grew from that little kernel of an idea to this organization that has spread in 2 years' time, to something significant. But beyond that, and so they have packets that they tell people how to go about doing this.
and they did have a virtual, I mean, we already had one Seder, one virtual Seder this past year. So they
Right.
already had a thing on their website, I know, about
Right,
how to invite somebody virtually.
right. But honestly, beyond those basic ideas, I don't know,
That's, that was it, just to
Yeah.
introduce it to
Yeah,
everybody
How do you
here.
spell it? What is it called?
it's literally it's the number 2, and I think it's FOR and Seder, and I don't think she has any
Okay.
spaces between any of the words.
I found it. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And in the chat, I just put in something called storytelling from the
Oh,
Lab School in New York that they do.
oh,
They teach
Mhm.
people how to do it. It
okay.
would probably cost something, but it's something, they use the Maven method, but maybe they train someone that could come to us, or we could.
Do you know
Yeah.
Mark Novak?
Yes,
Yeah,
What is his wife's name? I can't.
Renee
remember.
Bradfield.
Renee.
Yes, I mean she is phenomenal. Both
Yeah,
of them
I mean, they
together,
both
but
have that now. I forget what it's called, their storytelling. Um,
I don't know. But
I
they
don't know.
are.
I follow them on Facebook and they have
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, we're all from the same area, Barbara, so we-
Yeah,
we know
yeah.
them, yeah.
Yeah. But she, that if we could get them to do something,
Okay,
Well, so thinking farther down the line, based on some of what you just said, what about a women's league Seder
Oh.
this year virtually?
Rabbi?
I
we'd
think
have
that
to
would
get
be a great
started,
idea.
like, immediately.
Yeah, we probably would have to plan it soon. I know a lot of synagogues do it themselves. Is that something that we would want to have, like, someone facilitate for us? Like from,
I think though that the first night of Passover, maybe the
It's
first, the
Saturday
second night, you can also have a Seder, can't you, the last 2 nights?
no,
No.
well, usually the women's seders
It's
are
before.
like before. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be during the 2 nights of Pesach because that
It
we
would be
would really
before.
be doing,
But if
but
we did
before.
it, yeah, if we did it before, and
Right.
either we could get somebody to facilitate and/or put it together from our own,
Right.
in some way. I mean, we can have a
Yeah,
group that this would be their responsibility
right.
to
I
figure
think
out
it would
what
be
they
great.
wanted.
Oh, I love
We
that.
have enough time.
We
And
do.
you know-
It's-
We can
I'm-
even divide up the parts and then like
Right.
divide it up by region and say this
Yeah.
region does 4
Exactly.
questions and you come up with a unique way to do that, or the 4 daughters, or
It's a great
And-
idea.
And if we have any food themes or anything, they would have time in advance to work out how they're gonna do all that. And I think doing it by region would be great. It would get us, it would bring
More
everyone
people.
together. It would be really
Yeah.
unifying.
You know, it would be nice. It fills in a lot of the gaps from the last convention that we didn't have.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Oh, and it
my
brings up-
program
sorry.
Maven,
We
Oh,
my
this
think
is-
alike.
program Maven.
And
it
you know
would
what's
take
so
care of
good?
Some of the things that were missing, and we can call up the president and say, all right, we know your region presidents are very upset they did not get. This would fill in a lot of it.
And you know what else? Just yesterday, and hopefully she won't be upset with me for saying this, Eileen Rubin said to me, she wants to do the Zumriah again. And how cool would it be to get more women together for the Zumriah, the choir that we had, to do some parts of
Okay,
it?
so with that in mind, we really do, I'm sitting here saying, oh, we have time, but I realize
No,
it's
we don't.
January.
There's no
It's-
time.
all right.
Do
All
it.
right, I haven't
No.
felt really well this week. It's January. So, okay, so this needs to be, okay, all of a sudden, it's January. So what, we need to get somebody, all right, so what I'm gonna ask you is if, do we want to do this and just see if we can get a representative from each region, our region reps in some way, from the Ed Committee? It's a built-in kind of somebody there. Do we get somebody else that, anybody who wants to work on it? We put together a committee. Any thoughts? I mean, we're a working group here too.
I'm
Sarah?
a rep, I'm a region rep and a newbie to this group and
am I.
enjoying listening to everything. And I think that's a fabulous idea to do, to bring everybody together. And we really need that, that togetherness. Isn't that our theme this year, is
Yep.
together?
Yeah,
Nachas.
yeah. So
And,
one,
but I think portioning it out, and I'd be happy to do something for my region.
if everybody, and I'm just brainstorming, and feel free to shoot me down. Not literally. At any rate,
When is Pesach? Can I ask?
March
March
27th.
27th, yeah, it's a
yeah,
Saturday
we
night.
really, yeah.
Oh,
But
So
if
it's like
each
the-
region, if each region has a specific assignment that sort of
Mhm.
parallels the other region, but also has some difference with
Well,
it, then
we could, how many regions are there?
13.
13.
Okay. You could break the Seder down into 13 parts
And they're 14, so it works perfectly.
Oh, wow. That's
and then all the machers do one. So
With-
Well, the
Okay.
question is, are we doing a women's Seder? Are we following, I mean, there's plenty of
Don't have to.
women's Haggadot, not it. I mean, what I find is sometimes with all these, I've been to so many like Seders ahead of the Seders, I'm burned out by the time you get to Pesach.
Mhm.
So if it's something that's different, using one of those, and lots of people, I mean, I must have like 4, you probably have, a ton, Rabbi, of different
Mhm.
women's Haggadot, so that you're dividing the parts, but you're not taking like the standard.
Yeah, it shouldn't be
Haggadah, yes.
traditional. It should be that part, but have a woman's take on it from that region.
Right.
You know, the San Diego Haggadah?
Yeah, that was one of the first ones, I think.
Yeah.
Or it could be, the Debbie Friedman Haggadah, or
Right.
Well,
whatever that's
so how many
called.
people do we
Alexa.
need to chair this, to get this going? Now we're in the practical part.
Mhm.
Okay, because it's lovely idea, but we have to get it off the ground. So I have lovely Cheryl that we've all met. There's one. Okay, thank you.
I'll help
Oh,
remodel it. I'm in the
I'm from,
process
Toby.
of,
Toby,
I'm in the process of remodeling and moving. So right
Okay.
now my head is not, and my time is not exactly my own.
okay, all right.
But I mean, I can help,
I
but
would
can't
love
share
to,
anything.
Right, all right, all right, I heard voices. Who
well,
had it?
I
Who-
just want to say that I'm afraid to overcommit. I mean, I'm chairing our Seaboard conference
I
in
know.
May. And
Okay,
I'm much more excited truthfully about this Seder than, if I had known ahead of time and I given a choice.
we have a large, Barbara, we have a large enough committee that we can go. I'm
I
just
will
asking,
help.
who said that to me?
Greenberg.
Rachel?
And
Okay,
Carol Greenberg.
Carol.
And-
Julia, who's not here tonight?
Lynn,
Right now I have Cheryl, Rachel, Carol.
Lynn isn't here
Greenberg.
tonight. Renee Glazer isn't here, and Judy Berger also said she couldn't make it.
Oh, she'd be great for this. Sorry, not to volunteer her, but I ran my first Seder, women's Seder. I think she was there. So,
All right.
and she's continued it.
If the 4 of you, we just volunteered Judy Berger, we'll
Yeah.
have to check on that. But I've got Cheryl, I've got Rachel, I've got Carol Greenberg, I've got maybe Judy Berger, unless somebody else, 4 or 5. That's enough of a group that if you got together and just took a look, divided up, figured out what we would get to each region.
Well, I mean, the first
Rabbi,
thing
who do we have to, wait a minute.
the first thing
Go
would
ahead.
be finding a date.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
I've
if
been
there's
looking
no-
at that.
if there's no clear dates, also other sisterhoods will be doing theirs virtually too. So, there will be people there. There's only 4 weeks between Purim and Pesach, and you don't want to go right up to the end because people are preparing for their own Seders.
Preparing.
Is this something that we have to get any kind of clearance on?
Oh,
through-
yeah. No,
Yeah,
we definitely have to get clearance.
Yeah, okay, I knew the answer to that question.
Yeah, yeah. But doesn't
but-
stop with me. So,
So we have to clear this with,
but there is actually a clear date that I see on our calendar. It's
okay,
a little close to the Chag, but it's still a week before. March 23rd has nothing on our calendar, that Tuesday night.
it's a Tuesday night?
Yeah.
Okay. So beside Debbie, who else needs to clear this? We have to check with the regions? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
assumedly,
There's no region events that night. There
okay,
might be sisterhood events that night. But as far as, unless people haven't put stuff on the calendar, there's nothing on the Women's League calendar that day.
okay,
So hopefully whatever has been placed there already. And it's
All
probably
right.
with good reason because it's the Tuesday before the Friday when we have to clean for Pesach. So I don't know if it's too close to Pesach, but a week
Okay.
okay.
We have, no, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have two options here. One is to get it done for this year in the 2 months or so, as to whether it could be done. It would be a great year to do it. Or to say, no, we put it off till next year.
Or you do it
Or-
like as a Tu B'Shvat Seder or something.
Are we doing the Tu B'Shvat Seder? That
Not
fell
this year.
through.
No.
Not this year, next year.
No.
Okay.
Right.
I think next
Oh.
year.
And here's an idea to like put less pressure. And it sounds, for those of you who taught Hebrew school, which most of you look like you have, to do like almost like Seder highlights and have a highlight from that region so that we share ideas and the spirit of the Seder, but not
Right.
like the structure of the Seder.
Well,
May-
also, the idea I was floating wasn't to be a multi-hour event.
Right.
We weren't going to be sitting in front of a screen
Yeah.
for 2.5 hours. So, but it was kind of the idea of coming together in a large group, geographically distanced through our technology to share, this new celebration in preparation for our otherwise smaller celebrations. So,
Well, so what if we did it on like more of a discussion on, favorite Seder customs or something to your family, and
That's
then
taking it away from the region thing, though.
Yeah, and and Ellen, also the idea of the region, then hopefully those people in the region will come. So it'll be even more people feel like not an
What-
obligation, but
I
part
I
of
mean,
it.
if you follow those women's Haggadot, it's not really a full
No.
No.
service. I mean, that's sort of a shortened version anyway, and there's readings about, like not just women in the story, but other women, basically other famous Jewish women, or
but there might be more pre-production that needs to go on than 2 months might allow.
Yeah,
We
that's
haven't even
why-
started the planning. I was thinking, I didn't realize Pesach is as early as it is, honestly.
Right.
So I thought we had another month, and that would make all the difference.
What if we change the focus, which a couple of you have suggested, and instead did it as a way of getting our head in the game? So rather than it be a Seder per se, the conventional kind of whatever, women's Seder, whatever it is, but it would be more making
Enhancing the
ourselves.
Seder, maybe.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. What? What did you say?
Enhancements for the Seder.
Well, I don't know if enhancements could be part of it, but I think it's getting ourselves, psychologically,
In
emotionally.
the mind frame, yeah.
In the mind frame or the mindset.
it's like
of it.
Toby and Debbie did the getting ready for the high holidays, setting
Yeah.
a sacred space in your Zoom space
So-
for the holidays.
Okay, so maybe that's what we need this year, and then do it as creating the sacred space so that it becomes a woman's kind of thing, but it's a woman's thing. So it takes some of the pressure off. We do it through the regions. I don't know. This would be up to you as a committee, but it would change it a little bit. You could also get Grace, who's, chair of programming, to
Yeah.
be involved in this as well.
I had a different thought.
Go ahead.
During our Seder, we have a house load. I mean, we've adopted my daughter's friends and their families because we moved to Portland 14 years ago. And we lost all of our community, if you will, when we
Right.
came here to be near her. And so over the last couple of years, especially as the kids are no longer little ones and they're teenagers or preteens, I've gotten into creating reflections for them.
Mhm.
Like the Magid, the portion that tells the story. So what is your story? What are your goals? What confines you? So that they think about not just the story that we're telling, but how does it apply to them? Or for Karpas, it's the whole thing about growth. It's spring. How have you grown this year? How do you think you're going to grow in
I'm
coming
gonna
year.
start
I
to
like that.
cry.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of things that I like to do with them. I'm a retired full-time Jewish educator, and I was a specialist in liturgy for the Board of Jewish Education in Baltimore.
Okay.
I taught everybody 4 to 84 how to teach liturgy. So my head is always involved in thinking of questions. So that's sort of what I do with my Seder, and I wondered if that might be something that's appealing to people, because when you're doing a virtual Seder, I mean, we tried this last year. It doesn't work quite the same. I sent out a virtual Haggadah to everybody, and we tried doing it, and it ended up really falling on its face. So I went back to the questions thing, and that engaged everyone. For Hallel, you might talk about, what are you grateful for? What, even though it was a lousy year, what could you praise? Or what happened? What moments in your life are you grateful for during that time? So
All right, Toby, do you have this written down somewhere
I
as far
have
as?
some of it written down. I have to find my box of Haggadot, because I keep every year's questions there. But I have a whole bunch of them that I'd be
So,
glad
so
to
this-
share. That is not
Okay.
packed yet.
so this could be given out. All right, so we have 14 parts. So in other words, if we handed one of these with the prompt kind of whatever, the reflection, off to the regions, brought that up. I mean, now it's become something that's very different. We haven't done anything like that. It gets their head in the game.
Yeah.
It's really, it's a lovely, I don't know, that's me. That's what I love, but
But Ellen, I like exactly what you just said, getting your head in the game of Pesach.
And can I say, between the three of you, what you just said, especially what Ellen said at the beginning, that you need to psychologically get into it in the mind frame. You think about it, it's most likely going to be virtual again. We're not going to be able to be with people. Last year we were like, okay, only 2 months of this. At this point, it's like a year and it will be a year exactly. It's psychologically, mentally debilitating for people. It's hard. It moves our friends and our sisters up for all of us who won't be with our families again, to really hopefully be spirited about it or have an opening to discuss that. These type of things also, if we wanted, we can practice it beforehand, to even have small breakout rooms for people to discuss with each other how they feel about all of this.
And also,
And I took notes when Toby was speaking, so I wrote down some of your amazing ideas. So,
Thank
Toby, you might be
I mean, it's-
moving, but we need your mind.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
as I said, I can't be heavily responsible right now, because between deconstructing the house, if you will, trying to pack this house and actually get ready for a move, it's been a little crazy. My last 3 or 4 weeks have been insane, and I've been doing nothing for the last 3 days but taking wallpaper down.
But educators multitask and multitask
I
on
multitask
multitasking.
everything. So while I'm taking down paper, I can be thinking.
Oh, but educators
But I
can do all
can't
that,
share
the 5
anything
other
at this
things.
point, because my husband would have my head of taking on too much at once. But I'd be glad to find my brainstorming notes. So I have a Pesach notebook that I keep with recipes, and I have things that I've done in previous Seders, but I don't seem to have those notes in here. This is all menu stuff. So I'll have to go dig out my Haggadah box.
Okay.
That's probably where it is.
Thank you, Rachel.
what I love about this is we could end up sending out a beautiful document. Yeah, that basically leads them to take it with them, think about it, and use it at their virtual Seder. They could send, as Toby has done, they could send it to whoever they're going to be Zooming with, or they could just use it during the Seder for discussion. I mean, it really is such a beautiful extra layer to absolutely make it different from last year, when we thought, oh, this is a one-time thing. And here we are again a year later doing it over.
Yeah.
One
I
thing,
think it's a
Sponsors
great
we are.
idea.
one thing that we have, if you can't find all your stuff, Toby, is that we have, with all our Seder stuff, the box of like table topics. It's maybe 150 little cards with those kind of questions on them. So even if it's just you know, short questions like that you send out and have each region, you know,
Yeah, I have those for Shabbat that I have used.
right. So I
just
have the
pulled out an
Pesach
inspirational
version.
women's Passover Seder that was done at our shul. I think I helped write this one. And it was about freedom. And we did readings about freedom, which we could, you know, that also could be something that could be included. I'm trying to see what else was in this one.
I have something from, do you know Vanessa Oakes, the professor at UVA? I have,
Yeah.
my daughter was once in her class and they did a Seder and I went down to Charlottesville for that. I still have that Haggadah. It's wonderful.
So
There
then
are
I
also
think,
things from American Jewish World Service. And
Mhm.
they send me every year questions like that, questions and topics to talk about.
so with all that in
And
mind,
this is awesome. Now we have a women's league edition of that.
okay, with that in mind, we have to get this not approved, just like, here we are, look at what we came up with, aren't we wonderful? Kind of, you know, this kind of thing, and get this down on the calendar with approval, Rabbi. I don't know, you want to,
Debbie's at the region president's meeting now, so I don't know if I
Yeah.
really want to send her a message now. Not sure what you think.
I don't know, what's the protocol? You want to get on?
I can try. Oh, no, I wouldn't get on it right now.
I know,
but
I
could
know,
call
but
her. I could
what do you,
text her. I could text,
Okay.
yeah.
She could just announce it tonight and it would be done.
you know, that was what I said, but she said she can't. I'm like all for it, let's just get in there, but no.
Another thing that we did one year, is I did a whole thing about different charoset.
Mm.
And by talking about different types of charoset, we ended up talking about different Jewish communities around the world. So it's another
Apropos of that,
another idea that one could do and
Sure.
incorporate.
I have a lot of that done already. Every year I
too.
shared something called a Sederai, and we invited people, like one year we had someone from an Ethiopian Jew, and we did Ethiopian cuisine, and then we had somebody from Iran, and we did all Iranian things. Like I had never made a tadig before, and I made it, and she said, "Oh, this is great." So I have cookbooks that we put together for many
Oh, that's
years.
fabulous.
And they were all themes, you know, different international themes with introductions about the food and why, and the customs, you know, about putting the afikomen over your head. And so
Mhm.
that was all always introduced, you know, the different customs. So
So we
that's all
really
I
don't
have.
have to reinvent the wheel for a lot of this.
Well, I
Which is
think you're
very
getting
helpful.
a little bit, I think where we started was in a very different place of getting your head in the game of doing another virtual Seder. And oh my God, how, you know, and I really like the being mindful and being soulful
Got it.
and not getting into the food and the customs and all that stuff as much as the head and the soul and how, oh my God, how am I going to get my family back on a virtual Seder together and make it interesting and include everybody. And
So-
it's not about the food and the tablecloths and the Haggadah. It's about the spirit and the mind.
And this might, and if we do this through a region, the region would have, in my mind anyway, would have the ability to be as autonomous as they would want to be. So they would have the ability, if that's what was important within the communal voice of that region, then that would be what that region, your region, and I'm just saying this hypothetically, your region might say, we really have felt the burden of this. Okay, talk to me about Arizona today, which is where I am. And I think it's #1 in the country, and these people are nuts. Okay, and they're not staying home. So for me, it's a very scary place sometimes. So I'm coming from, you know, I'm an Easterner. It's sort of living out here now, and it's a very different area as far as what Maryland is doing compared to Arizona. So
Yeah, but
you know,
Ellen, you could be here and have protesters coming
I
to
got it.
town
So that's
tomorrow,
why,
you know?
Well, I
That's
have
pretty-
that in Portland.
Julia, but I think I would respect the autonomous nature of your voice as a region and what the concerns of that region is, you know, are.
if
So I
we're-
think
if
we
we're-
can handle that. I
If
think
we're
we can
putting
handle
this
that.
all together
Yeah,
and offering it to everybody on whatever the day is that it turns out to be. And we're incorporating all the different regions, the 13 different regions plus the board. Then I think we need some kind of theme running through it, even if it's not distinct.
How would you divide, how would you just assign the regions? You know,
What do you
with
I
think?
would just,
topic,
I would
or-
assign them or have them pick randomly at the region president's call or something like that.
I was totally thinking of the random thing.
Right, it has to be, because everyone will want the 4 questions and the 10 plagues of COVID, so, yeah, okay.
No, I
How
mean,
would
I
this
really,
work
I
out,
like
though?
Toby's questions a lot. You know, if we framed it that way, that's still getting your head in the game.
I know, I love what Toby said. Yeah,
Mhm.
I'm not
Thank you.
I'm not a food person. I could care less. So, but it's more about what Toby was saying. You know, those and also what Ellen was just saying about the fear and the anxiety and the stress that we've all gone through for the last year, and how that is affecting how we look at Pesach, at the freedom of Pesach.
So I think that there are common things that every region would have, and they
Right.
would have, and then they would have those things that would allow them to present their individual voices. And what's really interesting was we were talking about storytelling, and we were talking about things, you know, just as a lead up. It was like this was the natural evolution of where we would end up with this program because of where we were beginning. So
Right.
we don't have to disregard what we came up with before. We just may not be doing it yet.
Well,
maybe
how would
putting
the
that-
how would it
Seder is
work?
the quintessential Jewish story.
Yeah, and I think you're getting an intro here for whatever this
Ellen?
program will be. Go ahead.
How would it actually work? You know, would all the regions be on at the same time?
Yeah, that's how I was.
Yeah, it would be a
And
massive Zoom couple, would
each
be great.
region would do
Their
one
part.
question or one idea?
Whatever. That's what your
So-
committee would decide.
So,
Yeah.
you know, we would all Zoom together, but it would essentially be sort of live streaming who's ever got the speaking part at that time.
Right.
And everyone else would just be listening as we would go from part 1 all the way through part 14.
But there
Right.
wouldn't be any discussion? It would just be a
And the only way
presentation?
the only way we could do discussion would be in breakout groups because the group overall would be too large.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you'll get as many as you had at
4
convention. I can see 500, 700 people. I really can, but.
But
We
you know
had-
what? And if there are little glitches, it's okay. Because that's what it is. I mean,
But
we would not want
I think-
glitches, but you
I
know,
think what we would need to do is just, well, I don't know, I mean, again, you know, the committee can decide, but just give the regions a time limit.
Right.
right.
You
Well,
know,
for sure.
if they're gonna send this out to their women and say, you know, whoever wants to answer this question on the 10 plagues from this year, you know, send it in. But if 50 people all send it in, they're not gonna be able to read those 50.
No. No, so one of us from the committee would have to be assigned to each region and ask them to submit what they want to present. We would go over it. We would see how long it takes. We would tell them, look, you're twice as long as you get. You have to cut this back. So we would have to give them a lot of guidance and oversight.
And you
I
have
don't think this is
front.
going to take as long on the writing end of it or whatever they're putting in. They have a lot to say. The cut, you know, the culling it and putting it together is probably, but that's what a committee is for. You know, and you're all very experienced and very capable, and very bright, clearly. This is a great meeting. So, okay, so Rabbi, what do you think? The next step is getting to, I keep coming back there because
Well, because we have to start as soon as possible.
yeah, like 3 days ago.
So
No, they were Shabbos.
Debbie so far said, sounds good.
So far sounds good.
And then I said, can I tell them we can try to do this? So let's see what she
And
writes
now you're
back.
waiting.
Yes.
What did you say to her?
Oh, What I tell her.
Rabbi Ellen, is that the only date available? Because that is only a few days before Passover.
I know. So
It's a
the
little
week,
bit tight.
the week
Yeah, but we need
before,
that time too. What?
yeah, we do need that extra time. The week before, you can still hear me, right? Because my screen's not with you. I think we have like a something with a region every night. So for example, on, well, Sunday night, the 14th, there's a possibility. We don't have anything, but I know some people during the day are planning things. On the evening of the that Monday, Central Great Lakes has something, INR has something. There are two different meetings on the 16th. There are 2 meetings on the 17th. There's a personal conversation on the 18th. So we have a lot going on in our there's one day we had reserved on March 8th to have a education committee meeting, but that doesn't give us that much time to plan this.
I think we need
If
to
we
go
did it
with
on
the
March 8th.
the March 20, whatever it was, 3rd.
23rd.
Third.
That's
Yeah.
Tuesday
Yeah.
before
And if we,
Saturday.
as a
Right.
group, a little chair group, map it out, your dates and what has to be done, and, you're all planners, you can, and we'll help. So, I mean, we have a very large committee. So there are 60 something people on this committee, and, we can, I think we can figure it out.
I'll be happy to help.
We
Okay.
can, we can, if like you said, Rachel, if we need to assign people to each region, we can get people for each region. It doesn't have to be, you taking 3 regions or
Right.
whatever. So,
I would expect that they are region reps. So even, yes,
Well, we can do a tier approach. In other words,
right.
whatever the core of this committee is, and then we each take a couple of regions, but those people are the ones who are going to talk to the regions.
Right.
So I think it's
Right.
doable. I really do. Especially so long as we control the structure and we map out, how long we want it to be, and we start working on multi things that, the publicity as well as what the regions are assigned, et cetera, et cetera. It should be all right.
We have Danya in the office too on the publicity. So that is less, between Danya and Karen, right?
Right. Well, I was going to say,
Rabbi?
Karen can do a beautiful layout of whatever the heck it is we
Yeah.
need.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
a lot of that is not on us, okay?
Right.
And
So
honestly,
that's a
I think
help.
I wrote to Debbie, like similar to the American Jewish World Services sends out a supplement. This could be like the Women's League supplement. And it really shows how we've responded to the change in this situation of how we have to do our seders differently. And that it's not just about the food. It's more about the mental state that someone comes to your Seder table, whether it's around the computer or around the table.
And then those suggestions, like Carol, your suggestion with the food, that could be put into a page of suggestions of just one-liners. Like Grace often puts out in the weekly, blurbs there about programming and so forth. So we could, send to everybody just those little one-line kinds of, if you want to add a little interest, here's some different things you could do, but we don't have to do them that night.
We could
All right.
do little articles in the Women's League week leading up to it about topics that we're not going to speak about, but that are
Okay.
completely related.
Okay, so there's a way you can take some of that, cut the time on the other end, and it's just a little bit of prep that really won't take long to do, especially if we've got these materials, you can, cull from them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of sitting down.
Introduction, a little appetizer.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And it could be
That's
like
exactly
those,
what it would be.
those 4 weeks, something each of the 4 weeks
Right.
between Purim and Pesach.
Right.
And
And that is
hopefully,
getting, go ahead, Rachel.
no,
Rachel.
hopefully this will also encourage greater participation in the region conferences, which will be after Pesach, because if the women come and participate here and they feel the ruach and the
Great idea.
togetherness of all of us, they'll want to do it again in just their region.
See, so Barbara, typically anybody else who is a chair, there's something that you can, use as a publicity tool. Here, come to this. You know, the way convention was something that, wow, you know, you grab people. I grabbed Carol Green, who's sitting right there,
Yeah.
you know, because, and convention did that. Okay. So,
Rabbi, I know at one point you had talked about doing a women's league Shabbat on Shabbat Hagadol.
Oh, yeah.
next year.
Yeah, I think next year. I'm also wondering if any of the shuls will get upset if we go into what they want to do. I mean, I still think I never give up an idea. We all have to daven. So the difficulty is Shabbat Hagadol is the morning of the first Seder.
Right.
Yeah, so it's enough to like try to figure out what you're gonna eat that day. Technically you're not supposed
Egg
to be
matzah.
having matzah, yeah, egg matzah.
But it could, I don't know, I guess, was it Debbie? I think Debbie was saying that she goes to 2 services every week with the time difference.
Yeah.
I think so.
So
My
it
kids do
only
that sometimes.
interferes with the East Coast people to.
I do that a lot, 2 services.
I
Yeah.
do too.
It works. It works. Okay, so what we need is we need another night, like soon, really soon, to get together and have a meeting here as a committee or whoever is going to be in charge of this. Like, you know, on the
Toby, will
calendar.
you try to hunt down that other box?
I'm
Because
gonna hunt down that box, and actually, I'm sitting here thinking about the order of the Seder, and I'm thinking about Rachza, and I'm thinking, we wash our
That's the
hands
whole thing.
so many times now. Now, what does the act of washing your hands mean to you? Has it changed
Right,
because of COVID?
right.
and
And there's
that's-
that whole question of why do you wash one
Kids and
time,
my
but
kids and whoever else is
See-
on my Seder this year.
We're cooking on all those jets right now.
also, I'm
Okay.
thinking, because
My mind is now going a mile a minute.
And
Now
then
I
you
might-
have the
We'll get
Magi,
done.
the stories from
Now my
Magi's.
Apple
Stories, I always ask them, here's the story. The story. What's your story?
Okay.
Because to me, everybody knows the story, but what is your own personal story? The other thing you have to know is I'm a Jewish historian and I'm a genealogist.
okay.
So to me, stories are really where it's at, because your family has a story, whether you know it all or not, it's there. Sometimes it has to be discovered, but it's there. So I always throw this out to the kids, and I really throw it out to the younger people. Like, what's your story? What was your story of this year? What has changed in your life? What are you looking forward to? How will your story change? And I get some really interesting answers.
See, and Barbara, back to you. I mean, you should be getting some ideas here as well for conventions. So everybody here, go back to your own regions as well and find out who's in charge of conferences. You can kind of push them a little bit on this as well. Just doing a
right,
little.
because these are things that can be
Yeah.
adjusted not just for Pesach, but they can be adapted
Sure.
for May or whenever
Right.
your conference is, and talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we have a night that's available that, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 of us or whoever that's interested and wants to be part of it? Maybe it's this committee that we could sit down once, assumedly we get approval. I
Right.
don't want to step on anybody's toes on the calendar.
So
but we have to get
January,
this,
are we looking at like a week from now?
soon.
Okay. So
But it's
January,
just-
next Monday,
Looks
in
fun.
the evening, there's an INR board meeting that starts at 7. Does that affect any of us?
Mm-mm.
Does this work on Monday nights?
None of you
Yeah.
are?
Yeah.
Monday nights? I love you all. This is
I can do
wonderful.
any night but
Well,
Wednesday.
that, not
We
every
gotta check
Monday
the
night, but
calendar.
next week works.
Next week works?
Yeah.
All right, because we would have to sit down, and really like map this sucker out, okay? Nitty gritty and come down to what we need to do, work on dates, get it, figure it all out and produce basically. And
So that's the 11th? That's January 11th?
Yeah.
Next Monday?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which,
it's okay
did you
with
say
me.
the time? I didn't hear.
No, we
didn't
didn't
get
yet.
that far.
Do we do the same time we planned tonight
Well,
for
do you want to go
7:30?
earlier? We have a
Can we
lot to
do
do. Do you want to
earlier?
go earlier?
At 7 o'clock?
That's
O'clock.
okay.
Eastern?
4 o'clock for me will work. That's fine.
Wait a minute,
Six-
you're at 4? You're,
Yeah, well,
who's at
I'm in
4?
Oregon.
You're in Oregon, so you're Pacific.
Right.
And I'm Mountain now.
I'm Central.
It's crazy
so
Arizona.
We're talking
What?
7 Eastern?
7
Yeah.
Eastern.
I
7
can do
Eastern.
that.
Okay, so Toby, that's 4 for you,
4 for me. That's fine.
and that'll be 5 for me, which is fine.
Okay, and
All right.
7 here in New York.
Okay, are you all right with that? Then we can
L-
figure, I mean, I think we can really, if we set our minds to it and, get it mapped out.
Well, so suggestion is, everybody bring a Haggadah or at least have in your head, know the order. And, if we can,
We can all
Um,
sing it to start the meeting.
That's right, exactly.
well, but so, we have a format, obviously.
That'll
we
be one
have-
of the region's
14
assignments.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and by the next day, we should be able to approach the regions and say, here's what we need. Here's how we suggest you might want to do it, but you don't have to. As far as the dynamics of getting it produced. I'm not talking about the specifics of what they have to say, but, certainly.
So the big question behind the scenes, do we need a tech company to help us? Because
I don't know.
the nature of this.
No idea.
What? Yeah, now this is going to
I
take
don't
some
think-
bucks if it does, Rabbi.
Yeah, I don't think things
Yeah, I don't
need to
think
be
so.
like pre-recorded.
No,
or-
I
so-
agree with that. But so I guess we would use the spotlight function or whatever for just who's speaking, and everyone else would be not able to participate at that point. So maybe we can
Right.
just do it ourselves. Sure.
Right.
Yeah, and Danya and Karen can help with that.
Sure. Okay, fine.
And
I think
I-
we have enough people who are skilled enough at Zoom that we can figure it out.
yeah,
And then
Okay.
we can decide, do we want to allow the chat? Do we want to do breakout rooms? Do we want to include the Zoom Ria, whatever it was, as part of this?
The group.
Right.
Okay,
It kind of depends.
so-
Yeah.
All right, so I guess what we'll do is we'll send out, Julia, the Zoom info and everything to how many people are we sending? We've got this little group here, anybody that wants to be part of it, obviously. And a couple of others that we would have had on here who aren't on here tonight, but maybe we'll be able to be on next week.
Do you
So it's
not,
not,
do you want to invite everybody on that big education committee?
nah,
Too
it's too
many.
unwieldy.
Many
Too
people.
I,
unwieldy.
I think
People
what,
on that committee would want to be part of this and keep it small, but you might get a few more people.
well, what about if
Go
we, after the meeting, we see how many people we think we need? Like, do we need somebody from each of the regions?
Right.
And then we can
Right.
approach
Okay.
those people.
I wear two hats because I'm from a region, but
Right.
so there's
But-
other people like me that wear two hats.
So it's great because you'll be able to see just how this is going to work. And so I think that's a great suggestion to wait until after the meeting, and then we'll see what we really need and kind of make some big jumps. It's interesting. We thought this meeting was going to be one thing and it turned out to be
Right.
something completely different, which, from the education backgrounds that seem to be very prevalent here, often that's the better way to go. But it's, it's astounding sometimes where you end up.
But
And-
it doesn't mean that we can't do some of these other things in between too. It's just, especially if there's outside contacts that
Okay.
can lead
We
it,
could
so.
certainly do the showcase. That involves like maybe a call, okay? But I think if it's anything more at this point for the next 2+ months, we probably want to just rein it in a little bit and maybe do a few things. January is looking very busy. February and March, maybe
Yes.
not so much, but that's okay too. We don't have to have, these fully loaded months for the next couple of months, especially if we're doing something. We haven't done anything really big like this since convention.
And you'll
Which
be
is 6
engaging with
months ago.
so many people will be taking part in the planning that
Right.
that'll fill some kind of a void also, so.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting dynamic to look at what happened tonight here with this. So put this in your next rabbi's report.
And a lot of the ideas came together, like the whole storytelling idea.
Yeah.
And as we said, the Haggadah is a storytelling, and part of the liturgy. And I even think back to when we were discussing the Hebrew planning class,
Right.
and Rachel and I mentioned teaching from the Haggadah itself, the Hebrew of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's really
Okay.
Well, it's kind of, we keep going around like this with these ideas and building on them and adding to them, and they come back and they grab pieces of what we talked about.
Well, it builds a spiral curriculum in essence.
That's
Exactly.
exactly what we're doing.
Nice.
Yeah. So, all
when you
right.
finish your doing
Your homework
Jewish
is
genealogy class with Toby.
get anything together that.
I'm sorry, what
is-
did you say, Rabbi?
A
I'll let the
genealogy
other Ellen
class.
talk.
Oh, a genealogy.
Yeah, genealogy class when your renovations are done.
In your free time.
In free
In
time.
my free time. What is that?
Your homework is
Getting
to
homework,
get
yes.
anything together that.
Yeah,
you know,
I know where the box is. I'm gonna have my husband
Good,
pull it
okay.
down from the shelf for me
Good.
tonight so I can.
And any
Look.
ideas that will cross your mind this week, and they will, jot them down. Okay, we're not 20 years old anymore, so write them down, and so you don't forget them, because we need that. I know it was painful, but whatever.
No.
21 is okay.
I recently remodeled and don't know where my Passover stuff is, so I'm gonna have to go look for it.
Those boxes are so well marked right now because I didn't want to not know where they were.
Oh.
And I also told him that we're not letting the movers move it. I'm moving that in myself. We have storage cabinets in the garage. It's going in there so I can find it. Because
Okay,
stuff can be
So-
packed, but not the Pesach stuff.
anybody else, last comments before we say thank you?
Monday,
Really, truly.
somebody's gonna send out a link for Monday?
Yes,
Yes.
So I'll
perfect.
set it up and I'll send it to Julia and Ellen, and then they'll send it.
Wonderful.
okay.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you
Thank
so
you
much.
all
you,
so
everyone.
much.
Thank you. This was
Thank
Good
you.
meeting,
See you
really
next
good
Monday
meeting.
Good night.
Great
good to
group.
see all the excitement too.
The
Yeah.
energy level just
Good
went.
meeting. Hopefully everyone else will be as excited as we are.
I think they
Well,
will
once
be.
you're there, we did it. So thank you, everybody. God bless
Thank you.
teachers.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Everyone be well.